Hey everybody, welcome back to the homestead. I'm going to give you a quick garden tour. It is I think it's the 18th today. Wanted to give you an update on the chicken feed that I'm growing. As you can see behind me, I've got buckwheat, corn, sorghum, and barley on this side. And on this side, I've got a lot of field peas, buckwheat, millet, amaranth, sunflower, and a variety of other things. But I'm pretty impressed with what it's doing so far. Like I said, July 18th, so I've still got another couple of months of growing left. I think these crops are actually going to be ready before the end of the growing season. Hair on me as usual, Kelly hair. So I'll have to prepare to put in a fall crop as well, so I can get successional crops going in these fields or in these raised beds to maximize production over the length of the growing season, because fairly short growing season here in 4B. I don't know, I haven't grown much corn over the years, so I'm not sure exactly where it should be at this point, but I know knee-high by 4th of July is cliche typical, or an indicator of success, and this was probably waist high by July 4th, and now as you can see, some of these are well over my head, even if I was standing up in the bed. And it's tasseled out. In fact, there's some pretty good cobs of corn forming already, which is really shocking. Yeah, that bed over there. This is going to end up cross-pollinating. I've got 3, I think, different varieties here. So the cross-pollinate, and I'll see what I can get by saving seeds from the cobs that do form. I'll save a bunch of seeds and then have that ready for next year, and it'll be a hybrid of something that maybe is well suited to this climate. And I'll just keep trying to create my own breed that will keep growing, and it's all for chicken feed. It's not for human consumption, although we could do that as well if we were eating corn. It's a raspberry. Got what, 6 or 8 raspberry canes newly planted this spring through this bed. And I just threw some peas in here actually just to help improve the soil. Get some nitrogen in there with the intent of cutting them down. When they got to this stage, so that the roots would die, essentially, the bacteria release that nitrogen into the soil for the raspberries. I also got my typical errant rogue potatoes in here, because there was potatoes in this bed last year. I'm going to let them go and I'll harvest them. Give them to the girls probably. And I need to just cut back enough that the raspberries get enough sunlight not to die, so they continue to produce. You can see peas in this bed, same thing. I just put them down between the garlic just to, again, fix soil and just use space that wasn't otherwise being used. This garlic needs to be harvested. I'm gonna have to do that today and get it hung to start curing. See, this garlic is ready to harvest because the leaves are dying. In fact, it's funny, I didn't even get around to taking most of the scapes off. I took some off and gave them to my daughter and her boyfriend to make garlic scape pesto. And actually these still are good, so it's surprising that the leaves have died back. There might be something else causing it other than just maturity. They're not massive bulbs either. I mean, they're decent, but I like to grow bigger bulbs because I just like when the bud or the clove is big enough that it's easier to process and to make, well, to use it fresh or to peel it off and freeze dry it or slice it up, freeze dry it, and make it into garlic powder, which is probably what my wife will do with this. I'll harvest all this and hand it over, or get it cured, so hang it up and then give it to her to process. She's actually making cheese today, cheese curds in fact. She made, last week she made sort of a mozzarella, though it's kind of a modified mozzarella. It's not as simple as the one that you often see people make in a matter of hours. It's a 2-day process, and it's my favorite cheese that she makes, and her favorite, I think. And then she made ricotta and feta. So this week she's got a lot of extra milk, so she's going to make, like I said, cheese curds, as well as she has a big batch of kefir that's always on rotation. And we usually get our yogurt from a farmer, a friend, but she'll probably start making her own yogurt as well. Yeah, these bulbs are not huge, but the plant is essentially not really photosynthesizing anymore, so it's not really putting much energy back into those roots, so I might as well get them out of the ground and avoid the risk of them rotting in the ground. Hey, you asking for permission to get the chickens? Hey, what are you doing? Typically you would put a fork or a shovel in there just to loosen it up before pulling it so you don't rip the roots too much and damage the end, the root end, because that's where you can get some rot in there. You want that whole bulb, including the stem and the roots, to dry out fully before you trim them back. So you don't want to expose that, the inside, the meat of the bulb. You don't want to expose that to the air and have it dry kind of out through that end, or to rot in there. So this soil is just so loose because it's really deep, and I had this hay on here, straw, a pretty deep layer from last November, so that it's, you know, just really damp and rich, so, and loose, so it pulls out easily. These scapes are basically seed heads, right? So it's like, this is a flower. That's where all the seeds are for creating the next generation of garlic. It can reproduce two ways. One is the bulb. You just put the individual cloves in the ground, or in a lot of cases, like perennializing them in, say, the forest garden there, or the forest garden, the orchard area. I just leave the bulbs in. Each one of those cloves becomes a new plant, so you get a whole bunch of garlic coming up next year, the following year. And they end up being typically small because there's a lot of competition and it's a crowded space. But anyway, it's a good way to just keep creating seed, or just allowing them to be perennial in case you forgot to plant in the fall, although I have planted in the spring with pretty good success too. Or you just, something happens to your crop, or you move, or you run out of seed for some reason. It's nice just to have a reliable perennial crop that you can pick from. But anyway, these scapes, most people, including me, typically break them off when they're at this stage or earlier, so that the plant is putting its energy into creating a bigger root, or it's not even a root, it's a leaf expansion, the bulbs themselves. So by removing these, they're not creating or putting their energy into reproduction, they're putting it into storage of energy, nutrients back into that root system. I haven't seen a massive difference, to be honest. I don't know if I've seen any difference some years between the ones that I took off and ones that I didn't. Like the garlic bulb result from the plant, whether I take that scape off or not. Anyway, it's, some people claim quite a bit of difference, some significant success by removing the bulb. But maybe this year it would have been a good thing to remove it early, because these bulbs are not big, considering the plant's dying back, and it also might be dying back because it's put so much energy into reproduction, seed production on top. There's a good one. I had 5 different varieties, and I never keep track of them. I should. Maybe next year I'll label them, or buy a few from a local farm or producer and mark them. I had them marked last year, but anyway. Then I could keep track and record which varieties do best here, and also which ones we prefer, either based on flavor or size. and successive growing in a variety of conditions. My sister will be doing the same likely. She'll keep track of them probably, and we'll trade off, which is a nice thing to do when you get some redundancy like that, just to have somebody else that you're working in cooperation with. So one crop on one person's farm fails or homestead fails and the other succeeds, or some crops do better in some soil types, or pests wipe out a crop. Like this is really at risk, starting to get really at risk right now from raccoons. The deer fence is done, so the deer can't get in here anymore, but definitely raccoons. And chipmunks and squirrels are always a problem. Chipmunks are actually my worst pest. They eat they'd keep digging up the pea seeds. I would have a lot more peas, even between the amaranth crop and the millet and the sorghum and the corn, but they keep eating the seeds as I put them in the ground. But the raccoons, once that starts getting close to ripe, they just come in and wipe it out in one night, as you've seen in my garden in the past. So I'm either going to put the electric fence around the vulnerable crops, or I'll continue to deal with the raccoons as I do in my way, and utilizing the raccoon for food for us and or the chickens. Try not to damage these peas. Pea stems are pretty fragile actually. They bend, crimp pretty easily. This is half the garlic, the other half's there. So the other thing I do is select the biggest and best for seed. So what I'll do is kind of separate them at this point, bundle them up, hang them to dry in bundles of, say, seed, and then maybe fresh eating, and then what do you call it, powdered. So it's really between fresh eating and powder, not a lot of difference other than, say, quantity. Make a lot of garlic powder, so get a lot of I gotta take these scapes off. It's just gonna take longer to dry. Still a lot of moisture in those. In fact, we'll cut these up now. Actually, I really like, or have used in the past, I really liked scape garlic powder. So it's green. When you dehydrate, or when you freeze dry instead of dehydrate, basically maintains the shape and color of the fresh product. So when you freeze dry the scapes like that, ends up being a very vibrant green, and you powder it, so it's a very vibrant green powder and extremely flavorful. So that's what you put on your food when you're cooking, or on if you do things like garlic bread, it's good on that too, although it's very sharp, so you have to be careful that you don't use too much of it. So yeah, I'll separate out these good cloves. I think I'll test the flavor of them, but generally I'm just going to select the largest for seed, regardless of what the type is, and just keep trying to improve the crop over the years. And I'll give some to my sister to plant on her homestead, so that, again, we've got that redundancy, but also just to make sure we have products or food production in different ecosystems for different growing conditions. Because even within each of our own homesteads, there's quite a variable amount of diversity in the growing conditions. So we have sandy areas, some areas more acidic than others, some that are richer, especially her place where there's been livestock over the centuries, on and off. So some good soil where the livestock concentrated, probably winter yards. And probably some areas of this place, because looks to me like it was some kind of pasture or holding area, at least for horses, 150 years ago, probably up till about I don't know, 100 years ago, maybe not even, maybe more than 100 years ago. I know by the workshop the soil's really deep and I'm having a really hard time because the water accumulates at the bottom of these rocky ridges. Got the tractor stuck a lot yesterday trying to get the area prepared for the next buildings. 160 garlic bulbs plus, is there maybe 100 scapes that I'm cutting off? Okay, I think I'll end this video for now. We saw the chicken feed and I'll give you an update. You can see the buckwheat seeds are starting to form. Those flowers have been pollinated and they're starting to form buckwheat seeds. So I'll give you an update as I start harvesting that, how I harvest it and how I'm saving it, and then what goes into those beds afterwards. So being a brand new channel, there's a good chance that if you're not subscribed, you're not going to see any of these videos. So if you'd like to follow along on this homestead, and it's now sort of my domesticated life with the rest of my family, including my extended family. So multiple homesteads. So if you want to follow along, then you probably should subscribe and hit the notification bell and hit all so that you see all the videos as they come out. Even then, definitely no guarantee that YouTube's going to show them to you. If you skip videos from the channel, or don't at least click on them even for a brief period, or put a like or a comment or something, then they'll just stop showing you the channel, like they did to especially my Shawn James channel, to some degree my main, my Self Reliance channel. So yeah, well, if you want to subscribe, if you want to see the gardening content and the multiple family homestead content, then yeah, you probably should subscribe. Anyway, I'll show you in an upcoming video my wife making this into garlic powder and the storing of this garlic. Anyway, that's it. Appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you back here on the homestead next time. Take care.